Hello and welcome, Neko AB here with a new video, and this one's going to be about another one about music, because I am kind of curious of something, and I'm going to be mentioning four people here who I genuinely am curious of their opinions of if they were to see this video. I got Rick Beato at the bottom there, who talks about a lot about like pop music, popular music and stuff like that. He is a music producer as well. Andy Edwards, who's a drummer, talks a lot about prog rock and similar music. Josh Scorcher, who was in the Marine Corps band, his focus is mostly on music within video games and animation, but at the same time, he does show a lot of respect to music outside of those media, and he does talk about that as well. And then there's Marco Meatball, who is who did perform in various operas, who basically talks about the same things that Josh Scorcher talks about, more so video games and animation. But yeah, these four have some interesting takes that had got me thinking more in relation to my own taste. But yeah, those two got me to really think about like why I enjoy the kind of music that I enjoy. But of course, so that isn't the only reason, because two videos that I've been watching, I've watched at least three times now. Got Rick Beato's video on whether or not modern music's memorable, and then there's Andy Edwards, who did a hour-long video, well, almost an hour-long video on whether musicians serve the music. And the thing, it wasn't. That's not the thing that got my attention. The thing that got my attention is when he started talking about high information music and low information music, and the kind of state that people get in who enjoy the high information music, and which got me thinking about more about like why does my favorite scenes in animation click when it comes to the soundtrack, and why is that with certain video games I find that the whole package, music included, really draws me in. Why get so immersed in what's going on in the game? And of course, so there's the question of, is any of this even memorable? Um, and I also like Andy Edwards' take about high information and low information, because that also explains why, in my opinion, that also explains how the shape of people's taste in music is formed, because a lot of people talk about like the formative years, if you're young and you're introduced to a certain song, then that's going to be the music that you're going to listen to your whole life. That's going to be the defining thing. And I can see that, but at the same time, I kind of don't. And I do think it is about where you stand when it comes to if you prefer the high information or low information, and whether or not any of that basically clicks with you. Um, Now, one thing I'm going to reference is, because I did do a video of my top six music CDs that I currently own. To cut it short so you don't have to spend too much time, I mean, obviously looking at me using a virtual model, stuff like that, Gorillaz is on there with Demon Days, but there's also Jamiroquai with High Times, Stabbing Westward, and The Pillows, which is featured on the Fully Cooley soundtrack, number 3. But two others, which are interesting to point out. Best of Earth, Wind and Fire, Volume 1. Because like I listened to Earth, Wind and Fire when I was a child, and that is music that I enjoy even to this day. Still, like, fantasy is still something that grabs my attention. But then there's my number 6, which is also the other CD that I'm gonna still probably listen to. And this one I heard in my adult years, which is Zoe with Reptiletric. And yeah, a lot of everything on Reptiletric is stuff that, even though I didn't grow up with it, I found it enjoyable. Now, whether or not any of that is high information or low information, I can't say. I don't know. It's a new concept for me that I'm still trying to understand. But yeah, another thing is that when Rick Beato did his video on like the top 10 at at the time of his recording for Spotify, I decided to look into the top 10 trending of YouTube music. Was gonna do another video on that, but since my last video didn't perform so well, I figured it's not gonna be worth it. But I do notice a few things, like not just with like people that you'd expect to see on it, like with the Spotify top 10, Morgan Wallen makes 2 appearances. I'm not a big fan of Morgan Wallen, I'm going to be honest. But there were a few that I did find enjoyable. Dangerous by Sleep Token, Todavia Te Amo by Grupo Firma and Carolina Ross. Um, let's see, what else? Boots on the Ground by 803 Fresh. And although I don't like it as much, I do respect it in a strange way, which is Where I've Been, Shot Calling from Young Boy Young Boy Never Broke Again. And yeah, that's interesting. And also when I was last on the YouTube Music app, which was May 17, 2025, also lists a few things that I do listen to, some of which I haven't listened to in a while, though decided to listen to as a recent too when going into this video. Basically a tenth of myself from the video game soundtrack of Guilty Gear Strive. I do find that enjoyable. No One's Home from the Stipendium, featuring additional vocals from McGuire. Basically a rap song about a dystopian video game. And speaking of rap, there's also Go Getters by Maury Calliope. Another one of those virtual performers for the Hololive group. Though Go Getters is also featured in a Warner Brothers anime. I might get my channel struck if I were to say which anime, so I'm not gonna. But yeah, that one with Harley Quinn. And of course, along with another person on Hololive that was on my front page on YouTube Music because I listened to it. I cannot pronounce the name of the song for the life of me. Michizor, I think it's supposed to be pronounced as, by Hochamachi Suisei. And of course, another virtual performer who's not in Hololive, an independent performer by the name of Akuma Nemine, who did Pizza in the Cosmos. And of course, so there's also like anime related stuff like Superation Core from Kotoko. Well, other anime related stuff. And I'm gonna actually stop there. And of course, typical stuff like I Disappear from Metallica. And yeah, a lot of this stuff is music that I do legitimately enjoy, but the question does come like, is that high information or low information? And is that even important? Because like none of those make it on the top list, even though you go to the communities where they are popular and you can see people speaking highly of them, you know. A lot of people speak highly of Hochamachi Suisei, a lot of people speak highly of Calliope Mori. And like I said, even amongst the indie virtual performers or the VTuber scene basically, you got Akuma Nemine, which a lot of people view as a sweetheart, even though she did create a rather, let's just say, spicy song. Yeah, CPR is not what you think it is. But yeah, a lot of this is another thing that I find interesting because you've got a lot of these smaller communities that highly respect these people. And not just even with the virtual space, even when I'm talking about when I bring up like the Stipendium or Kotoko, a lot of people do find those very respectable. They're not the same rising stars as like what's that guy's name again? Morgan Wallen. They're not rising stars like Morgan Wallen, but at the same time, I don't know. Like they do, in my opinion, they have that wait for it moment, the stuff that I actually do find interesting. But at the same time, it's interesting how few of them become popular or become trending, despite the fact that there's so many reasons why. And I do wonder if this does relate to high information versus low information music. But at the same time, still, there's other things that have me wondering, is there something else out there? Now, I do plan on doing a deep dive into modern music and this weird curiosity I've had for years, but at the same time, I don't know what to really say. I want to think everything's clicked together, but I still feel like I'm missing something. But even then, I'm probably still going to do my deep dive and just put it out there. And if someone else can find something to put in there, then that would be great. Because like I spent way too much time doing this, and I think I am holding myself back. But yeah, but I'm not just doing this because I want help with this project. I'm also doing this because I do hope that at least these four people, with their very different backgrounds in music and their very different experiences, would have something to say in relation to what I had to say. So that's it with my video. Also, in relation to games, I've also assembled a sort of playlist of music for video game music for people who don't listen to people who don't play video games. And I don't know, I'll include that playlist in the comment section so people can look that up as well. You know, stuff that I myself have enjoyed definitely in my teen years, but also some that I found in my older years as well. So with all said, I'm Neko AB, and I thank you for watching.